Greetings all, it is I, TSX, and in this video I will be going over how I paint my Deathguard to resemble their 30k colors, using this here, Plague Marine. I start by priming the model Skeleton Horde through my airbrush, however a rattle can work too. I would not recommend priming the model black, as then more layers would be required for a nice white. Next, I apply multiple layers of Wraithbone via the airbrush until it becomes opaque. If you don't have an airbrush, applying this via brush works just fine, however it takes much longer and your sanity may or may not shatter. After the Wraithbone has dried, I wash all the areas that will be painted a darker color later on, such as the metals, pauldrons and backpack, with Agric's Earthshade. If you, for some reason, need to rush the process, you can skip this step. Once the wash has dried, I begin base coating the model. Deathguard green is applied to the pauldrons and knees, and their backpacks if they have them. Balthasar gold is then applied to the trim and trinkets. Abaddon black is applied to the pipes and all the joints. Rhinox hide is next and is applied to all areas which will be painted rusted metal and to his unbroken blade. Any fleshy bits or horns I pick out in Rakarth flesh. While I still have the paint on the palette, I also pick out certain pipes to give them a more fleshy feel. The cloth I paint cloth color, in this case dryad bark. The pouches on this lad are also painted with dryad bark. His buboes and maggots are given a treatment of Averland Sunset. Then, to appease the wrong god, I paint the lenses corn red. Before we wash the model, it is best to tidy up all the areas. After the tidying up has been done, I begin with the first wash, namely Druchii Violet. This is applied to all the skin and to those fleshy areas. Once that's all dried, I bring out the blessed Agric's Earthshade. I mix a wash of water and Agric's Earthshade and coat all areas on the model, except for the skin, which I only paint the borders of. The wash should be thin enough to flow into the recesses while not staining the armor too much. A rough ratio of perhaps 2 brushes of wash to 1 brush of water is used. Now we get to the fun part, namely rusted metals. I begin by thinning down Mornfang brown and then proceeding to stab it into the Rhinox hide areas. This step I use for anger management. Now with the rust applied, I lightly dry brush lead belcher over all the rusted areas, being careful not to cover up the heavily rusted areas too much. Now it is time to clean up this nurgly boy. Well, as clean as you can get. I start by touching up the Wraithbone areas with, well, Wraithbone. I make sure to avoid any areas which are darker, but if you do accidentally, don't worry, we'll fix it later. But before that, I bring out Deathguard green once more and do the same to the Deathguard green areas, again making sure I'm not hitting any of the darker parts. I paint the center of his prescription lenses with Evil Sun's red to truly stimulate his senses. You could leave it here, but if you wanted to walk those 7 extra miles, here's how you do that. I begin by thinning down Rhinox hide and then carefully painting it into the recesses and potholes or over any areas where I messed up in the previous step. Be careful and deliberate, since applying Wraithbone back over Rhinox hide is time consuming, but if you do mess up, it's just best to call it battle damage. With that step done, I grab Vallejo Dark Sea Blue and highlight the tubes and armor joints. An alternative to this would be Incubi Darkness from Games Workshop. I feel the blue tone adds a bit more interest to these parts rather than just painting them grey. The bone and skin areas are layered with Rakarth flesh, again staying away from the recesses. For the cloth I mix dryad bark and Rakarth flesh in a rough 50-50 mix. I then apply said mixture to the more raised parts of the cloth, along with some small scratches to add texture. After that, all I have left to do is prepare the base. For this I use Vallejo mud on the top of the base and on some parts of the boots. After that is all dry, I painted Dryad bark. After a quick ultra matte varnish, I do the most important step, painting the base trim black. I hope you enjoyed this video, I hope you have a nice day, and enjoy your painting.